Hey everyone, I'm Mike Del Preti, and you're listening to Context, where I'm having meaningful conversations with industry leaders about the businesses and technologies changing real estate. So my day job is turning data and context into meaning, and that is what we are doing today with my guest, Cunningham, CEO and founder of Orchard. Hey, Court.
Hey, Mike. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I really appreciate you coming in. A little snowy today. It was hot, but I appreciate you weathering the storm to get here.
Absolutely. Spring in Colorado. Nothing like it.
All right. So, Court, how do you typically start your days?
I am an early riser. I get up at 5:30 and I love those first 90 minutes of the morning. I have a coffee. I'll get caught up on email, look at some online reporting. And my favorite part of the day is when the sun comes up over the trees in our backyard, which is, depending on the time of year, 6:30 to 7. I go stand outside and just bathe in the sun for 5 or 10 minutes, and it energizes me to start the day.
That's great. You mentioned looking at some metrics, and not that this is the most interesting part of your day, but I'm thinking about it. You mentioned metrics, and I know when I talked to Megan from Open Door, she was talking about metrics. What's the one metric you're looking at these days when you wake up?
There are a lot of them. It's really around sales productivity. We're growing our sales team pretty dramatically, like 5x this year. And so we're trying to ramp that team and scale them. And so lots of metrics around sales productivity.
Okay, great. So, do you have kids?
2 boys who are actually, I call them boys. They're grown men now, 23 and 25 with full-time jobs. But yes.
Maybe if your kids were a bit younger, how would you explain to them what you do? What is your job?
Orchard is e-commerce for home buying. We are integrating real estate brokerage, title, and mortgage onto a single digital platform to make it simple and easy for the consumer.
All right, but hey, Dad, but you're the CEO. What does that mean? What do you actually do? What is your job?
So I view my job as 3 things: to set a clear and compelling strategy, to hire excellent people to execute that strategy, and to communicate relentlessly about what matters and why. And maybe 4, that's related to focus, like investing in a few things and doing a few things well, rather than doing 10 things in a half-assed average way.
Yeah, okay. What kind of aha moment led to the founding of Orchard?
Yeah, so it's a fun story, I think. So I knew nothing about real estate before I started this 6.5 years ago. I'd been doing SaaS software stuff at DoubleClick and at Yodel. And Yodel sold, and I met an incubator in New York, and they wanted to do something in real estate. And they, like me, are extremely customer focused. And so we did a couple months of customer listening, talking to people and with no particular agenda. Tell me about your transaction. What did you like? What didn't you like? Why did you choose your agent? What went wrong? And then we came up with hypotheses of things that would solve those, and we put them in front of people. And this problem of, I'm a homeowner, and I want to move into my new house, but I can't because I'm stuck underneath the mortgage of my old house, and my house is a mess, and I've got to keep it clean for showings, and I don't really have the money to do paint and carpet. And we said, great, can we solve that? And we came up with what we now call Move First Equity Advance. And there were a lot of things we tested that consumers would say, oh yeah, that's great. And the ultimate test was, who did you buy your house with? My friend Sue. Like, would you cross the street and tell Sue, I can't work with you because I've got to work with Orchard? 90% of the things, the answer was no. And on Equity Advance, they're like, hell yeah, where do I sign up? And so we knew we had something, and then we obviously had to take several years to build it.
There were a bunch of companies at the time that kind of launched with really similar offerings. I mean, were you kind of all looking around and watching each other, or was it like, the invention of writing, where it just kind of happened across the world generally at the same time anyway?
It's a good question why so many companies, because you're right, there were 4 or 5 or 6 at the time, all taking a slightly different approach, but trying to solve the same problem. I think it was 2 things that enabled it. One was, the SFR boom after 2008, that single-family real estate became a financeable asset on Wall Street. You could get warehouses to finance this. And then I think Open Door really opened people's eyes to, you can use that as a way to accelerate the transaction, remove friction. So those didn't really play into our thinking, but I think those 2 things were certainly big enablers in terms of people's thinking and creativity.
Yeah. So Tim Heil, I know we know Tim, and he was on the podcast. You guys have a funny story about domain names, right?
Yeah, so Orchard was originally going to be Homeward. We'd done all this, and so we loved it so much. I think we had the trademark at the time, and we'd bought the domain. Oh, no, sorry, he had the trademark, but we had the domain. So it was sort of a standoff, and I'd never met him. And his business was, I think, just an idea at that time. There was not much to it. He was still doing his Keller Williams team and his title business. And Chris Heller, who's an advisor to Orchard, as a friend of Tim's, and connected us, and he said, hey, I've got a weird question. Like, you own this domain, you're not using it. Can I buy it from you? And we got to know each other. And I consider us good business friends, and he's a great human being.
Yeah, he sure is. All right, so you've been doing this about 6.5 years. You didn't know anything about real estate beforehand. What do you wish you knew 6 years ago when you were starting this that you know now?
Yeah, I mean, it's obvious in retrospect, but, real estate is obviously a cyclical business. And in the good times, you need to be preparing for the bad times. We didn't do that as much as we should have. And two is that real estate is a business of tails. And I sort of knew that coming in. But like once you live it and you see, just it's the land of 1,000 edge cases, which is part of the reason it's been so hard to automate and standardize, because every transaction is different in some way. So I now have lived that for 6.5 years and understand it. And it's made me and the team better operators.
So land of tails, you mean by that kind of there's a long tail and there's just tons and tons of edge cases? No two transactions are alike?
Edge cases in terms of people's situation, they're divorced, they've got a kid living with them and they want to share title with them, those kinds of things. But then housing stuff, they've got the ginormous living room and the tiny backyard. The house has a really steep driveway and all these things that impact value. And the other thing that was actually a huge learning for me is, I came in thinking, oh, we can make this like, Carvana and, very transactional. And the problem is that a Honda Accord is a Honda Accord. Like everyone knows what it is, and it's just how many miles are on it and what condition is it in. Every house is different, and every buyer wants a very specific thing. And so a couple of people like Bungalow tried to do certified pre-owned homes. We actually was one of our concepts early on. And what we realized is if I want the 4-bedroom house with the big backyard in a certain school district, and I want to transact this summer, there may only be 1 or 2 houses at that time that meet that. And so I don't really care that it's certified pre-owned or not. I want that house. And so it's not as liquid a market as you'd think when you kind of narrow it down to all the purchase criteria people have.
Here's a side thought. Based on what you just said, right? If somebody wants that house, they're going to get the house. So I guess the question I have is, does the experience really matter to the consumer? Right? Because if they want the house, they're going to get it. Like my daughter just got her driver's license and she had to go to the DMV. And the experience wasn't great, but that's what you need to do to get your license.
Yeah. And look, that's why, traditionally the person who wins the business, the agent that wins the business is the local market expert. They transact more houses in Denton than anyone else, and they have access to off-market listings, right? It's all about access to inventory and expertise. What we stumbled across was that's not going away. You're going to need an agent who knows the market, but that there are things that are universal across transactions, like I want to be a non-contingent buyer because in any market, non-contingent buyers pay less. That's really valuable. I want to be able to be out of my old house and into my new house so I don't have to deal with showings in any market and for any type of. So that's what we've tried to focus on, things that are universal across the buying and selling transaction.
So if that's the learning over the past 6 years, what is something you would have done differently in building Orchard?
I would have focused on, so we were a little bit caught up in all of the venture capital craziness, and Open Door was worth 10 or 15 or 20 billion dollars, and today they're worth $1 billion, and it was all about growth. And I do think we have an incredible mortgage company with very high customer satisfaction and profitability, incredible title company, incredible brokerage. Like we built a great operation and we built a great technical platform to integrate it all that I think is unique. No one else has something designed to orchestrate the transaction across all those steps and to automate it. But in the process of doing that, we were caught up in growth, and I think we wasted money on growing too quickly. And kind of what we thought was investment was really wasteful spending. So, and I'm an older guy in the business world. This is my third startup, and experience is supposed to help you avoid mistakes, and it has, but it didn't help me avoid that one.
Interesting. So the market's in flux.
Yeah.
And a lot has happened over the past 2 years. So how have you and how has Orchard adjusted to the changing market dynamics?
Yeah. So the market is I think, fairly stable right now. But obviously, March of 22, the Fed started raising rates, and it was the biggest percentage increase in rates in 100 years, second biggest in nominal terms after the 79 to 81 cycle. And that had a huge impact on transaction volumes and affordability, which we all know. And so we had to get into out of growth mode and into profitability mode, and did a bunch of things over the past 2 years to do that. And we're on a path to be profitable by the end of this year. And that is really important. My last two businesses, I remember literally this weight lifts off you when you're no longer dependent on external investors. You control your destiny. And something very powerful happens. You can use that cash flow to invest in new innovations and the future. And it really, especially right at that turning point, what I found the last two times is some of the best execution happen in that kind of 2-year period when you're kind of tipping from losing money to making money, because investment dollars are very scarce, and it forces real rigor and okay, we're not going to invest in 4 things. We're going to invest in 1 thing or 2 things. And that's hard. What are we not going to do is strategy.
Yeah.
And that discipline leads to, I think, great outcomes.
So can you give me a couple specific examples of changes at Orchard over the past 12 months?
Yeah. So, we've streamlined our service delivery. We have increased our prices, which is interesting. We believed for a long time that our service was phenomenal. We have a 70 net promoter score, and we're going to deliver higher quality at the same price. And that would have people lined up outside the door. Mm-hmm. People were kind of suspicious, well, hold on, you're guaranteeing the sale of my old home. You're giving me a bridge loan. You're fixing up my old home. How do you guys make money? Where's the catch? And so as we started to increase price, we saw sales conversion actually improve. It addressed that concern of where's the catch.
Was it free before?
It was free.
It was effectively free. And you're saying the number one objection you had was, is this too good to be true?
Exactly.
What's the catch?
And if it was so good, why isn't your yard sign in every yard in my town? It's in 1 or 2. So
you started increasing the prices.
And that gave people oh, okay, I get it. You're giving me these things of value and you're charging a fee. And so I think we're done, but we increased from 0 over a number of changes to a 1.9% fee. So on the average home, $8,000 of transaction fee.
And sales conversion is going up?
It went up initially, and then it didn't go down after that. So so we think we're in a good spot.
Okay.
Second thing that we did, which was a massive change, is historically Orchard had been a employed agent model. So it was like a traditional sales force where you had a base salary and commission. Real estate is obviously a seasonal business, and carrying the cost of that sales force in the shoulder seasons, November through February is expensive. But the bigger reason we changed, so we changed from that model to a independent contractor model, which is what everyone in the industry does. And the insight was not that it saved us a little bit of money, which it did, but that it aligned incentives. So in our old model, people had to do a lot of transactions, 50 transactions a year. And at peak season, they were exhausted. They didn't have work-life balance. They were actually happy when a customer terminated, which is not what we want as a business because it gave them more time. Mm-hmm. In the new model, we're going to have many more agents, and we are going to pay our agents on a 100% commission basis, and they're going to have a higher incentive per transaction. So we think that they'll be able to serve the customer better, and there's a higher alignment of incentives because they're going to do 12 to 15 transactions a year, so every transaction counts.
Are these 1099 agents going to be part of the Orchard brokerage, or are you working with KW agents, Remax agents, Berkshire Hathaway agents?
So we do. So our primary strategy is to have them as part of the Orchard brokerage, and we're growing, from 70 agents last year to over 300 by end of this summer. But in certain markets, we have surges that are beyond our capacity, or we have people moving outside our markets. And so we've set up partnerships, as many in the industry have, with national partners and some select regional partners to handle that volume. But 90% of our volume is handled by our agents.
All right. So if I'm an agent and I bump into you in the elevator and you've got 30 seconds to pitch me why I should be an Orchard agent, what's the one thing? What's the pitch? 30 seconds.
It's not one thing, but I'll give you a few things in 30 seconds. So Orchard generates incredibly high quality seller leads. We're going to not give you leads. We're going to give you set appointments, listing presentations. And those presentations, 2/3 of those people who show up are going to transact with someone. And our agents on average convert a little less than half of them. In a world where buy-side commissions may be going down, set seller appointments are extremely valuable. The second thing is we have a culture of learning and excellence. And I don't care how good you are, you can always be better, right? Tom Brady practiced 6 days a week. You can always be better. And that's who we look for. So we're not trying to hire, like some people in the industry. I have no desire to be 100,000 agents or 50,000 agents. I want to be, over time, a national footprint that is 5 to 10,000 really high quality agents who are committed to excellence in their craft and who can make a lot of money because we help them grow their business with these high quality seller leads.
Okay.
Longer than 30 seconds.
That's all right. It was compelling. So listen, I mean, this shift from employed agents, W-2,
Yep.
to independent contractor agents, 1099, you made the shift. Redfin is kind of undergoing a similar shift right now. I mean, is this a sign that that just doesn't work?
Look, never say never. There's always some model that no one today has thought of, but I spent 5.5 years trying to make it work. I don't think it makes sense in this industry because of the seasonality and the cyclicality. And, there was a research report that a guy from Oppenheimer put out on Redfin where he said he thinks the model doesn't work for real estate, not for the reasons we changed, but he said, look, when the market surges, they're slow to hire. And when the market tanks, they're slow to fire. Mm-hmm. And that just means that it is you can't ride the ups and downs of the market as efficiently as other models. And I think that's right. We had other reasons for doing it around seasonality and alignment of incentives, but you add all that up, and I just don't know why you would do that. And the interesting thing is, what we thought is, well, they need to be on salary to control the experience because we're so much about the customer experience, as is Redfin. And what we realized is, yes, if you're a traditional brokerage where you're giving people some training and not that much, of course you can't control them. But if I'm giving you 2 listing presentations a week that convert at a high rate, that's going to generate a lot of income for you, I do have a degree of control. I can set standards and expectations. And the way I enforce standards is, if you don't meet our standards, you don't get the leads. Like, you can be in our brokerage and do it your way, but if you want our leads, you have to meet our standard of excellence. So the leads help attract agents, but they also help drive a great customer experience. And that's how we think we'll be able to control that over time.
Yeah.
And so, not anyone can do this, right? You have to be able to generate those leads and deliver them up to the agents in a compelling way.
So for you to generate the leads, it comes down to customer acquisition. And I personally feel like customer acquisition cost is like the killer in this space. That is the one thing that just kills all these new models.
Yep.
Would you agree?
Well, I don't know if it's the killer. I would say it's a challenge, and it's one of our bigger challenges. And many people have been impaled on a bad CAC. But yeah, I mean, the challenge is that, so obviously there's no recurring revenue in real estate, and you're looking for the needle in the haystack. There are 4 million people who are going to move nationwide this year. How do I get signal as to who those are? And so our insight has been a fewfold on improving CAC. One is, when I find that person who is going to move, I can't say, hey, I've got this one thing. I've got Move First Equity Advance. Oh, you don't want to use that? We can't work with you. Or you've got an agent you want to work with? We can't work with you. We said no. Oh, you're in Dallas and you want to move to Chicago? We can't work with you. I mean, we literally said no to probably 1/3 of our funnel. Today, we say yes to all those situations. You want to go traditional? Great, we can do that. You want a cash offer? Great, we've got partnerships with cash offer people. You want to move to Chicago? Great. We've got a partner in Chicago. You want to work with your own agent? We can do that too. So taking that friction out of the funnel and meeting the customer where they are is really, really important.
That's a great learning, a great insight. In terms of getting potential customers into the funnel, I mean, you've been doing this 5 or 6 years. What have you learned around how to acquire those customers?
Yeah, so it's brand matters in this business. And so people like Zillow and Opendoor and Redfin have an enormous asset in that brand, that they are a known and trusted entity. And it takes years and hundreds of millions of dollars to build that brand. And so we see it. So San Antonio, Texas was our first market. Back when venture capital was flush, we sponsored the San Antonio Spurs. We have 60% brand awareness in San Antonio. Our CAC is insanely low in San Antonio. So the question is, how do you get that brand awareness and trust, nationwide, right? We're in 6 cities. We want to be a national brand over time, and it's expensive to do that. And we think it is our traditional playbook of direct-to-consumer advertising. And over time, we think we will want to and have to develop other channels to market. So just like we have multiple ways that we can serve the customer, we need multiple ways to meet the customer.
Oh, that's a good insight. So what are your views? You've talked about learning, right? What are your views on failures? And how do you incentivize people at your company to try new things?
It's a great question. So I'm a huge believer in learning velocity, and I talk about it in new hire training. And, we try to test a lot of things and learn from them. I wouldn't say we incentivize it, but people know that we're going to try things. If they don't work, that's great. We can either iterate and improve or just file it away as a failure and kind of catalog that as a learning. And so I think it's a cultural thing that comes from me and my leadership team that, failure is part of success. And you learn more from failure than you do from success. So I wouldn't say it's an incentive thing. It's just a cultural thing.
Okay. Are there any sort of applications of AI that you're particularly interested in right now?
I think we're not investing in it because we're pushing to get to profitability. And so we're focused on sales conversion and profitability this year. As we get to profitability, I think there are interesting things you can do with writing offers, with searching for homes. And, I think AI is going to be a powerful tool in the way that mobile was a powerful tool that enabled other things. But I think it's just that. I think that many companies will be able to adopt AI and license it from vendors who are producing it in much the same way as we kind of, all of us have mobile apps and have embedded the benefits of mobile into our business.
So you talked about, not investing in AI because you're focused on profitability. And before we hit record, we were kind of talking about the slate of disruptors, the class of the 2019 class of disruptors, and kind of who's still around, who's not around. The ranks are thinning a bit, but we're not over, and we still got, 12 to 18 months to go. What kind of company is going to survive?
Yeah, I think there are, you're kind of talking about venture capital funded disruptors, but, I would consider, companies like EXP and Fathom and Real disruptors, as you've talked about in your research. Our view is that the traditional world, the agent is the customer, and it's all about driving agent count. And some people like Keller Williams have done that through great training, but all of the no-fee, low-fee people with EXP at the front have done that through splits. And that is clearly going to be a winning model for some people. The challenge with that model is it ignores the other half of the equation, which is the consumer. And we personally don't see a lot of people trying to change the game in favor of the consumer. And so what we're trying to do is both. How do we create a compelling value proposition for agents who can come here, learn, grow, and build their business, and create something that is stress-free, fair, and simple for the consumer? So who's doing that? Not a lot of people. I think that, Divvy and Point and Unison around the fractional ownership are doing some interesting things. I think Homeward, who's in our space with a slightly different approach, is doing some interesting things, creating a better consumer experience. But it's not a lot. Most people are focused on aggregating agents.
No, that's a good point. So if you look to the future of the industry, If you were to start a seed venture fund, what kind of companies would you want to invest in right now in the real estate ecosystem?
So number one, it's less the idea, like where we started and like we were going to be certified pre-owned homes, and that lasted about 6 months. So it's less the idea and more the team. Like people are everything. And if you've got someone who's got grit and drive and creativity, they're going to find a way to win. So that's number one. But in terms of ideas, I think, and we're thinking about how can we do this, not this year, but next year and beyond. The industry hasn't changed because it's all these little cottage businesses, small title companies, mortgage lenders, real estate teams, all on different technology and with no real economic incentive to collaborate through technology. And so I think the creation of platforms and standards to allow people to collaborate together are going to be really, really important to transform the industry. And we see it. So in our own ecosystem where we've built our internal platforms called Deal Hub, we see incredible synergies, right? A third of the tasks have been automated. The mortgage company and the title company aren't doing the same settlement statement twice, and they don't tie out and their phone calls back and forth. There's one settlement statement that has shared data and everyone can see it. So that kind of visibility, I think, is going to be important. It's really, really hard to do. I do think companies like Blend or Qualia, who have large customer bases and very useful modern technology, are in a really interesting position to start to do that. They're obviously beyond startups. Blend is public and Qualia is a large private company. But yeah, technical standards for interoperability. And you look at the history of commerce, railroads, packet ships back in the 1700s, like standardization drives growth in ways that people can't really predict or foresee. So, and look, we've had some of that in real estate, right? In the 70s and 80s, standardization of forms and things like that helped, but it's a drop in the bucket of what needs to be done.
What's the biggest opportunity right now around that standardization?
So Zillow is, I think, trying to do this through the super app of like, how do you streamline the closing by bringing real estate brokerage, title, and mortgage together? And so I think they're headed in the right direction. I don't know a lot of details about how they're approaching it, but streamlining the settlement process and the closing process is an enormous opportunity.
I will note for our audience at home that when you said super app, there were air quotes involved in that, which I think is par for the course when talking about it. And no disrespect, but it's hard to define what it actually is.
I think that's the beauty of it, right? It's it could be many things.
It is many things to many people. Hey, so you've listened to this podcast, yeah?
I have.
Anything in particular you've learned or taken away from it?
Yeah, I've learned obviously about the personalities of people. I thought the Leo Perea interview was great and learned a little bit about EXP, but a lot about him as a human being. The Megan Meyer Tolson, I think is her name, from Open Door. Learned a lot about the Open Door strategy and their evolution and just was really impressed with her as a person. So to me, I love listening to podcasts, and I'm usually when I'm outside doing yard work. So now that spring is here, I'll be listening to more podcasts, and it just sparks ideas. And so I really appreciate the work you're doing.
Oh, thanks. Well, I mean, we're going to wrap up there. Any closing thoughts?
No, look, it's a really exciting time in real estate, and I know a lot of people feel that interest rates aren't going down fast enough, and the NAR settlement is going to be a headwind. But I think that especially vis-a-vis NAR and buyers agents fees, like there's an enormous opportunity for innovation. And I've joked with some people that billions of dollars of venture capital were invested to transform real estate, and small gains have been made. A class action lawyer from Kansas City is going to affect more change in real estate than those billions of dollars of venture capital, which I think is amusing. So I see a lot of opportunity ahead.
So true. So true. All right. Well, that's a great place to end. Court, thanks for joining. I'm Mike Delprete. You've been listening to Context. If you want to see more of my work where I'm turning data and context into meaning, so that's actionable intelligence that's clear, timely, informs real estate industry leaders, feel free to check out my website, mikedp.com, and we'll catch you next time. Thanks.